She walked into that courtroom alone. No family at her shoulder, no legal team in expensive suits, no friends sitting behind her offering silent support, just Serena Blackwood-Hayes. 34 years old, 8 years of marriage behind her, and a court-appointed attorney named Claire Donnelly who had mispronounced her last name twice in their only meeting together. The courtroom was full on his side. Marcus Hayes had 4 attorneys at his table, 2 senior partners, 2 junior associates whose only job was keeping documents organized and confirming that everything was proceeding as planned. His family filled the first 2 rows behind him, his mother in an ivory blazer, his brother beside her. 3 business colleagues in suits that cost more than most people earn in a month. Serena's table had 1 nervous attorney shuffling papers. The chairs behind Serena were empty. Every single one of them. Marcus leaned back in his chair and looked around the room with the comfortable ease of a man surveying something he already owns. When his pale blue eyes landed on Serena sitting straight and still and completely alone, he smiled. Not a smile for her, a smile entirely for himself. His attorney Patricia Lance noticed it and adjusted her blazer with the quiet satisfaction of someone who believes the outcome is already decided. Serena did not look at either of them. She looked straight ahead. At the empty judge's bench, at the carved seal above it. Her expression was calm. Completely and utterly calm. And that single detail, that unbroken composure on the face of a woman sitting alone against every visible advantage, was the one thing that should have warned Marcus Hayes. But arrogance makes people blind to exactly what they most need to see. And Marcus Hayes had been blind for a very long time. The gavel came down. Court was in session. Patricia Lance rose with the practiced ease of a woman who has never once doubted her right to be heard in any room. "Your Honor," she began, her voice carrying smoothly to every corner, "my client, Mr. Cotter. Marcus Hayes seeks to finalize the dissolution of this 8-year marriage and to establish that all contested assets were accumulated entirely through his financial management, his professional network, and his independently developed business portfolio. The respondent maintains no independent professional income, no personal financial history of substance, no family financial resources of any note whatsoever, no external support structure of any kind." She let that final sentence sit in the air for a moment longer than necessary. Serena's attorney Claire Donnelly rose with genuine courage and presented everything she had prepared. 8 years of Serena managing their household while Marcus expanded his business across 3 cities. The relationships she had carefully built that directly supported his professional advancement. The executive-level precision with which she had run their shared life while receiving the title of housewife and none of the credit of a partner. Patricia Lance objected 4 times in 5 minutes. Every objection was sustained. At the morning recess, Serena sat alone on a bench in the corridor. She watched pigeons in the parking lot below through a tall window and kept her hands folded quietly in her lap. Further down the corridor, Marcus stood talking to a journalist who had recognized him from a business magazine. Just finalizing some personal business, Marcus said pleasantly. Then his eyes drifted briefly toward where Serena sat with her back to them. Some people simply don't know when something is finished. The journalist wrote something in his notebook. Serena was too far away to hear the words. But she had lived inside the shape of Marcus's contempt for 8 years. She knew it even from a distance. She breathed in slowly. She breathed out. She waited. When the afternoon session began, Patricia Lance presented the financial documentation. Extensive, forensically arranged. 8 years of Serena's life reduced to household expense records and credit statements. The documented existence of a woman who had lived entirely inside someone else's financial world without building any visible corner of her own. Patricia turned and let her gaze move with slow deliberateness across the empty gallery rows behind Serena's table. "In summation, Your Honor, The respondent is a woman of no independent means, no professional contribution, and evidently no support structure of any kind. She came here alone. My client asks this court to recognize the proportional reality of this marriage. Proportional reality. No support structure of any kind. She came here alone. Each phrase dropped into Serena's chest like a cold stone. She breathed through every single word and kept her eyes on that carved seal above the judge's bench, on something that no one else in the room could see yet. The Blackwood name was not a name you found in celebrity columns or on social media profiles. It was not displayed on stadium scoreboards or announced at charity galas where visibility was the point. The Blackwood name existed in the rooms where actual decisions were made, where outcomes were determined not by who announced themselves most loudly, but by who had built the most enduring foundation beneath everything else. William Blackwood had spent 4 decades building that foundation. His family's shipping and private equity enterprise operated across 4 continents through a structure of holdings so carefully constructed that most people who benefited from its operations never encountered the Blackwood name at all. Government infrastructure contracts in 7 countries. A private equity arm that moved capital with the patience and inevitability of deep water. He had been offered seats on visible boards and declined them. He had been invited to appear on prominent lists and arranged for those invitations to be quietly redirected. Visibility, William Blackwood had understood since early in his career, cuts both ways. His mother, Dorothy Blackwood Sinclair, had taught him that. Dorothy had started at 30 years old with a struggling regional trading company that everyone around her believed was beyond saving. She turned it into something significant within a decade. By the time she was 50, she had been consulted privately by 3 heads of state on matters of trade policy and economic structure. She offered her counsel. She accepted no public credit. She returned home and continued building. She did not speak about these things. The Blackwood family did not speak about most things. Serena had grown up inside this understanding the way other children grow up inside whatever framework their family provides for making sense of the world. It was demonstrated continuously in the way her father moved through rooms, in the way her grandmother signed documents, in the way both of them spoke or chose not to speak about the things that mattered most. She was 11 years old the first time she asked her grandmother about it directly. She had been sitting at the edge of Dorothy's enormous oak desk, watching her work through documents with focused and unhurried attention. She asked, "Grandma, why don't we ever tell people about everything we have?" Dorothy set down her pen and looked at her granddaughter with those deep emerald eyes that saw everything they chose to look at completely and without distortion. She said, "Because power that announces itself has already begun to lose something essential. The moment you show everything you have, you give the people across the table the ability to prepare for it. The ones who build lasting things do not announce what they are building, they build. And when the moment comes, they do not send a warning. They simply open the door. And by the time the other side understands what has come through it, the outcome is already determined." Serena had carried that lesson inside her for 23 years. She was carrying it still. She had met Marcus Hayes at 26 at a business conference. He was representing his family's construction company. She was attending without title, without family affiliation, without any marker that would immediately communicate who she was. She had chosen to attend that way deliberately. It was the cleanest way to see people as they actually were, rather than as they performed themselves when they knew who they were speaking to. Marcus had been charming, genuinely energetic. His ambition had a quality that felt in those early months like something that could build things rather than simply consume them. She had loved him. That was the part people sometimes missed. She had genuinely loved Marcus Hayes. In the 3rd year of their marriage, he came to a formal dinner at her father's estate and learned the full weight of what the Blackwood name carried. She watched it happen from across the dining table. The subtle recalibration behind his eyes. Not wonder, not love made larger. something transactional, the specific look of a man who has just discovered that the situation he is in is more valuable than he previously understood and is immediately beginning to calculate what that means for him personally. She noted it. She filed it. She continued watching carefully for what that recalibration would eventually produce. By the 5th year, she understood completely what she was watching. By the 7th year, she had made her decision. By the 8th year, she had filed the papers. Not impulsively. Not from pain alone. In the precise Blackwood way. Quietly, strategically, with complete certainty about where the process would end before it had officially begun. 4 weeks before the trial, she sat at the dining table in her father's estate. William at the head of the table, Dorothy across from her, both hands resting on her silver-handled cane, those emerald eyes steady and reading everything. William said, "Let me come on the first day, Serena. Let me be there from the beginning." She said, "Not yet, Dad." He said her name again with the weight a father puts into a name when he is worried and wants her to know it without making her feel judged. She said, "I need to stand there first, alone, without any of you behind me. I need Marcus to believe completely that I have no one. I need him to feel entirely safe, to bet everything on that certainty. Because the larger his certainty, the more complete what comes next will be." Dorothy studied her granddaughter for a long and careful moment. Reading her face, reading the steadiness behind her eyes. And then Dorothy smiled. The specific smile, the one that appeared rarely and only in moments of genuine strategic recognition. The one Serena had seen exactly 4 times in her life before this evening. Dorothy said quietly, "She is right. Let her stand." The empty rows behind Serena in that courtroom were not abandonment. They were strategy. She was not showing her hand. She was letting Marcus bet everything he had on what he could see. And then she would open the door. By the 2nd day, Marcus had stopped being careful. He arrived at the courthouse answering emails about a development project. He greeted the court officers by name. He took his seat and ordered coffee, and crossed one leg over the other and looked like a man attending a meeting whose outcome he had already reviewed. When Serena walked in, he watched her cross the floor with the mild attention of a man watching weather outside a window he has no intention of opening. He noted the same charcoal dress, the same composed expression, the same empty rows behind her. Then he returned to his phone. Patricia Lance pressed the morning arguments with methodical precision, building her case brick by deliberate brick. She was thorough, commanding, building toward a conclusion she believed was architecturally complete. She was also, in ways she did not yet understand, being permitted to continue. Through the small rectangular window set into the rear door of the courtroom, the corridor outside was briefly visible. For approximately 3 seconds, the corridor filled with movement. Several people moving together with the unhurried purposefulness of those who know exactly where they are going. The movement was visible for those few seconds, and then the corridor was still again. No one inside the courtroom appeared to notice. Marcus's brother leaned forward in the gallery and said just loudly enough to be heard by the surrounding rows, "She is alone again today." Nobody in the family section. Same as yesterday. His mother made a small, satisfied gesture of agreement. Serena's hands rested on the table, completely still. Deep in her chest, something was not nervousness and not ordinary hope, something more structural than either. The settled knowledge that a door was about to open, that what came through it would change everything about how this room understood itself. She breathed in slowly. She breathed out. She waited. At the afternoon recess, Marcus's delegation left the courtroom with the comfortable energy of people moving toward a pleasant planned lunch. Easy laughter. Briefcases snapping shut. Marcus's mother straightening her ivory blazer. His brother holding the door for Patricia Lance, who accepted it without acknowledgement. The courtroom emptied in under 3 minutes. Serena remained seated at her table. Claire Donnelly had stepped out briefly. The room was nearly silent. Just Serena and a court clerk at the far wall, organizing file folders and the low afternoon light coming through the tall windows. If you had stood in the doorway of that courtroom at 10 minutes before 2 o'clock and looked at the woman sitting alone at the respondent's table, you would have seen the most complete picture of isolation a courtroom can produce. The gallery behind her, every seat empty, her attorney absent from the room. The judge's bench, vacant, her phone on the table, dark screen, no notifications, complete silence. And Marcus visible through the glass partition in the corridor, laughing with his brother about something, making no effort toward quiet. The sound of a man who has run out of reasons to moderate himself in any way. Serena placed both hands flat on the table. She looked at them for a quiet moment. Her mother's sapphire earrings caught the afternoon light from the window behind her, two small, precise points of reflected blue light. She said to herself, "You are not what they see when they look at this room right now. You are not the empty chairs behind you. You are not his version of you." She closed her eyes. In the darkness she found her grandmother's face. Those deep emerald eyes. That composed and patient smile. The voice that had said over an oak desk more than 2 decades ago, "The vault does not announce itself, my darling. You build it, and when the moment comes, you open the door." She held that image the way a navigator in uncertain water holds the light of a fixed star. When she opened her eyes, Claire Donnelly was coming back through the side door, managing her briefcase and a paper coffee cup, with the slightly precarious quality of someone giving everything they have to a situation that has asked more of them than they were resourced to provide. Claire settled into her chair and looked at Serena with genuine concern and said softly, "How are you holding up?" Serena looked at her for a moment. She said, "Almost." Claire blinked. She said, "Almost okay?" Serena said, "Almost." Her voice completely steady, her eyes moving back to the front of the room. The rear door of the courtroom moved, barely a half inch. Then, stillness. And then the door opened all the way. It opened deliberately, not with haste, not with the apologetic energy of people who know they are late, not with urgency of any ordinary kind. It opened the way certain things open when the person moving through them understands completely what they are doing and has decided that the world will adjust its pace to match theirs rather than the reverse. And William Blackwood stepped through. The clerk at the far wall looked up from her file folders and went completely still. Her hand stopped moving. The air in the room changed. The room reorganized itself around a new center of gravity. The light seemed different. The silence seemed different. William Blackwood was 6 feet 4 inches of composed and absolute authority. The black 3-piece suit tailored with a precision that spoke of someone for whom the way they occupy a room is itself a considered act. Silver white hair. Dark mahogany eyes moving across the courtroom slowly, cataloging everything, settling finally with the warmth of something that had been patient for a long time on his daughter at the far table. Behind William came his legal team. 4 attorneys, each moving with the specific confidence of professionals who have developed through consistent experience a relationship with the possibility of losing that is essentially theoretical. The lead attorney was Dr. Anaya Mehta. Her name appeared at or near the top of every serious assessment of family law practitioners in the country. She entered with a leather folio under one arm, assessed the room in 4 seconds, and moved directly toward Serena's table with the focused purpose of someone who knows exactly where they are needed. And then the door paused, and Dorothy Blackwood Sinclair came through. 83 years old, 5 feet 3 inches, pure silver white hair pinned with an antique gold comb, midnight blue silk, an ancestral double strand of pearls, A silver-handled cane carried not because she required it, but because the sound it made when it met the floor communicated, without any words, that the person carrying it has been in rooms like this one before, and has always known how they end. Marcus's brother stopped mid-sentence in the gallery, his mouth slightly open, eyes locked on the doorway. Marcus's mother looked up from examining her rings, and went very still. Patricia Lance turned from her notes, saw William Blackwood, and her expression moved through confusion, then rapid recalibration, then the beginning of the cold descending feeling of a professional who has just realized the case she believed she was litigating is not the case that is actually occurring. And Marcus. Marcus Hayes looked up from his phone, and the smirk left his face. Not quickly, not all at once. It left the way ice leaves a surface in early spring. Perceptibly, continuously, without any possibility of reversal, leaving something beneath it that was considerably colder and considerably more exposed. He knew William Blackwood. Of course he did. He had sat at that man's dining table 6 times across 8 years of marriage. He had shaken that hand. He had used the word sir with the practiced ease of a man performing deference while conducting an entirely different internal calculation. He had spent 8 years believing that the distance he had carefully engineered between Serena and her family had become something real, something permanent, something he owned. He had been wrong. He had been catastrophically and completely and irreversibly wrong. William crossed the courtroom floor toward Serena's table, his footsteps measured, unhurried, each one landing with the quiet certainty of a man who is exactly where he chose to be. Every head in the room turned. The clerk had not moved. William reached his daughter's table. He placed one hand on her shoulder. Gentle, absolute, the hand of a man who has arrived exactly when he intended to arrive. He looked down at her. She looked up at him, and the composure that had held Serena upright across 2 days in that room, that extraordinary diamond-hard composure she had maintained through every empty chair and every condescending pause and every phrase designed to reduce her, shifted, just at the edges of her eyes, just in the quality of her breath, not into weakness, into its precise and complete opposite. The relief of being seen by someone who has always known exactly who you are. She said, Dad. The word barely more than a breath. He said, we are here. Dorothy made her way through the gallery, past Marcus's brother, who seemed to physically contract as she passed him, past Marcus's mother in the ivory blazer, who had developed a complexion that now matched it with uncomfortable precision. Dorothy did not look at these people. She did not grant them the acknowledgement of her attention. She moved through the gallery and through the low wooden gate onto the main courtroom floor with the unhurried certainty of a woman who has been in this configuration of room before many times and has never once left on the losing side. She reached Serena. She settled into the chair directly behind her granddaughter. She placed the silver-handled cane across her knees, folded both hands over it, and looked up, across the courtroom, directly at Marcus Hayes. Those deep, emerald eyes, 83 years of formidable patient intelligence behind them, focused on the man across the room with the precision of something calibrated over a very long time for a very specific purpose. Marcus Hayes met that gaze. The silver cufflinks caught the light. But the man inside the suit, across 4 full unbroken seconds of eye contact with Dorothy Blackwood Sinclair, looked away first. Dr. Anaya Mehta settled at Serena's table and opened her folio and leaned toward Claire Donnelly with genuine warmth. She said, "You have done strong work with what you had available. Let us finish this together." Claire Donnelly blinked 3 times, nodded, the coffee cup in her hand entirely forgotten. Patricia Lance stood at her table watching Mehta work, jaw set. The expression of a skilled professional who has just completed a calculation she did not want to perform and arrived at a result she cannot dispute. Marcus leaned toward Patricia and spoke urgently and low. Patricia's hand beneath the table made one small controlled gesture that meant several things at once. Not now. I understand. There is no version of today that ends the way you believed this morning it would end. The judge returned to the bench. Paused, took in the completely transformed room. What had been for 2 days an overwhelming imbalance, an assembly of power on one side against a single composed woman on the other, had been restructured entirely around its true foundation. The judge's eyes moved from William to Dorothy to Dr. Mehta, then to Marcus Hayes. Marcus Hayes, pale beneath the careful maintenance of his complexion. Phone face down. One hand pressed flat on the table beside it, cufflinks still catching light from pure habit. But the man inside the suit irreversibly and completely diminished. And Serena Blackwood-Hayes sat at the center of everything that had shifted and turned her eyes from her grandmother's face and looked forward at the carved seal above the judge's bench. She was still calm, but the quality of that calm had transformed entirely. It was no longer the calm of a woman holding herself together alone. It was the calm of a woman who was held. The proceedings concluded across the following 14 hours. Dr. Anaya Meto worked with the quiet, comprehensive precision of a surgeon who has studied the complete anatomy of the situation in advance and knows before the first incision exactly what will be found and what needs to be addressed. She placed before the court documentation of 4 separate attempts by Marcus Hayes across the marriage to access the Blackwood Family Trust through financial instruments bearing Serena's name and signature. Each attempt had been reviewed by the Trust's board of directors. Each had been declined. Each declination was fully documented. Arranged chronologically, these 4 attempts told a story that no single one of them could tell in isolation. The story of a pattern, a strategy, a marriage being used as a vehicle for access to something the person being accessed had not consented to provide. She presented evidence that Marcus had filed his divorce petition within 60 days of the 4th and final declined application. An application that Marcus had described to his business partner Harrison Cole in writing as the last available avenue for the capital restructuring the project requires. She said to the court, "We believe the timeline will speak clearly for itself." It did. The settlement that resulted was in Patricia Lance's later private assessment, structurally unavoidable from the moment William Blackwood walked through the rear door. When the complete financial record of the marriage was made fully visible, the numbers went where numbers go, when truth is the only thing organizing them. Marcus Hayes left the proceedings with less than he had brought to the marriage. But the settlement was not the end. Dr. Mehta, who was thorough in all things, had identified in the accounts of Marcus's construction company a series of financial irregularities that had nothing to do with the Blackwood Trust and everything to do with how Marcus Hayes had been running his business for the past 5 years. On the afternoon of day 2, she had referred those irregularities to the relevant regulatory authority. Quietly, without announcement, without making it part of the courtroom proceedings in any way that would draw attention before the referral was properly received. Day 3. 6:58 in the morning. Marcus stood in his kitchen in yesterday's clothes, holding his phone, reading the screen, with the expression of a man watching the floor disappear beneath him in real time. 4 missed calls from Harrison Cole. 2 calls from his bank. 1 from a number he did not recognize. He called Harrison Cole first. Harrison answered immediately. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, Marcus sat down on the kitchen floor. The phone on the tile beside him. The morning light coming through the window above the counter with the complete indifference of light to the circumstances of the people it falls on. By 10 o'clock that morning, Harrison Cole had retained independent legal counsel and communicated his intention to cooperate fully with the regulatory investigation. The phrase cooperate fully when it comes from a business partner means the shared architecture between 2 people has been unilaterally and permanently dismantled. By 1 in the afternoon, the regulatory filing had become public record. By 3 o'clock, the first journalist had confirmed the story and begun making calls. By 6 in the evening, Marcus Hayes, who had walked out of that courtroom 2 days ago with the confidence of a man who had just watched a woman be reduced to the sum of her empty chairs, who had told a journalist that some people simply do not know when something is finished, was not answering his phone. He had spent 8 years trying to make Serena Blackwood-Hayes into those empty chairs. He had not known those chairs were not empty. They were waiting. He left court on day 1 feeling like a king. 3 days later, he was ruined. 12 days after the trial, in the late afternoon of a generous day, Serena sat in the rose garden of the Blackwood estate at a table set for 3. The roses along the stone wall were in the last of their autumn bloom. The light moved across them, slowly, the way late afternoon light moves across things it has decided to be kind to. The estate was quiet in the way that places with long histories are quiet. Not empty. Settled, William sat beside her reading with the deep, unhurried attention of a man who has nowhere more important to be. Dorothy sat across from her, both hands around a teacup. Those deep emerald eyes warm in the afternoon light, watching her granddaughter with the quality of attention that had always made Serena feel completely and genuinely seen. Serena had both hands around her own cup. The sapphire earrings caught the light. She had walked into that courtroom alone. She had sat in those empty chairs and breathed through every one of them. She had held herself upright through every phrase designed to reduce her and every silence designed to isolate her. She had done all of it without breaking, without announcing, without showing a single card before the moment she had chosen. Not because she had no one. Because she had learned at the edge of an oak desk in the light of a study window when she was 11 years old that the deepest power available to a person is the power that does not announce itself until the moment of its choosing. Marcus Hayes had spent 8 years in proximity to the Blackwood name. He had sat at the tables. He had attended the dinners. He had believed that proximity was the same as understanding. He had understood nothing. The Blackwood family did not display their power. They built it. Carefully, over time, with patience and strategy and the complete settled confidence of people who do not need the acknowledgement of others to know what they have. And when the moment came, they did not announce. They opened the door. Dorothy set down her teacup with the small, precise sound of fine china meeting a saucer. She looked at Serena with those emerald eyes. And she smiled, the specific smile, the one Serena had seen 5 times now in her life. Dorothy said, "You opened the door." Serena looked at her grandmother in the late afternoon light. She said simply, "Yes," because here is what Marcus Hayes never understood. Here is what people like Marcus Hayes will never understand until the moment it is demonstrated to them at a cost they cannot recover from. Some people walk into a room alone because they are already the most powerful person in it. They know it. They have always known it. And they are simply waiting for you to find out. Before you go, I want to leave you with 3 questions. When Dorothy Blackwood Sinclair walked through that courtroom door and Marcus Hayes looked away from her gaze for the second time, what did you feel in that exact moment? Serena chose to stand completely alone before calling in her family. Do you think that required more courage or more strategy? Or were they, in her case, the same thing? Has there ever been a moment in your own life when someone underestimated you completely because they could not see what was standing behind you? Leave your answer in the comments. Every single one gets read. If this story moved you, subscribe to Karma's Heiress. Because the most powerful stories are never the loudest ones. They are the ones where someone sits in empty chairs and breathes through every word designed to diminish them and holds their composure through everything because they already know exactly how it ends. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Your silence is not your weakness. It is your strategy. The vault does not announce itself. It simply opens the door